Hi girls, welcome to my channel. I'm Vidya and I hope you're doing well. If you're breastfeeding your baby, you might have noticed that your breast milk supply doesn't always stay the same. There are ups and downs throughout the months that you're breastfeeding, depending on the changes your body is going through and depending on your baby's growth. Some factors that may influence the breast milk supply are your hormones, the food that you eat, your hydration, and the baby's growth as well. Like if the baby is going through a growth spurt, they want to nurse more, they're hungrier than usual. So a lot of different factors. Even the stress that you're under affects the breast milk supply. And if you're pumping, you'll especially see the difference in your supply on different days. So if you notice that your supply has dipped for some reason, you can find this video useful, because these are some tips that I used when I noticed there was a slight dip in supply. This video is only for girls who are already breastfeeding, and they're not for people who are having trouble starting the milk supply in the first place, like in the first few days after birth. That is a whole different topic, and the best person to guide you in those situations will be a doctor. I'm not sharing any supplements or any magical formulas for increasing breast milk in this video. These are all natural home remedies, you can call them. The first thing that I want to talk about is cluster feeding, which means that the baby wants to nurse more frequently than normal. If they're going through a growth spurt, or if they're going through some big change, they want to nurse more frequently. When Vikrant was going through a growth spurt, he would nurse as often as once every half an hour or once every hour, and that used to take a toll on my body and my milk supply as well. So cluster feeding is one of the first clues that the baby is hungrier than usual, and maybe your supply needs to keep up with it. However, having said that, cluster feeding alone is not indicative of a low milk supply, because babies cluster feed for a lot of reasons that don't have to do with your supply. Like if they're teething, they may nurse for comfort. Like the only source of comfort for them at this stage is to breastfeed. So they want to stay close to you and bond in this way whenever they're going through a big change. So teething, growth spurts, any kind of separation, they all mean that your baby wants to nurse more. So you have to kind of take a call on whether it's really a dip in supply or if the baby is going through some changes. Either way, it's good to give your body a little bit of a boost to keep up with your baby's needs. The first tip I have for you is drink lots of water, and I don't want to say it too lightly, because staying hydrated is extremely important, especially during breastfeeding, because breast milk is made up of, I think, 70% water. So it is not only a source of nutrition for your baby, but also a source of hydration as well. So if you're not hydrated enough, your supply will immediately show a little bit of a drop. So every time I saw a little drop in supply, I used to drink a big glass of water. That was the first thing I would do. Another thing that really helped me immediately to boost up my milk supply was electrolytes. Now, I don't know the exact science behind this, but I think when you're breastfeeding, when you're producing breast milk, the electrolyte balance is kind of disturbed in your body. So sometimes you need that extra dose of electrolytes. So I don't mean just glucose, I mean all the salts together. So you can get an electrolyte mix that's available. So this was also the next thing that I would do. Every time I saw a little dip in supply, I would have a glass of electrolytes, and I would keep having that every 1 or 2 hours until I noticed that my supply has come back up, and it would work very effectively. Like in one nursing session, if I saw that my supply has gone down, I would have some electrolytes, a big glass of electrolytes, and in the next feeding session, I would notice immediately that there's a change. Like in my next feeding or next pumping session, I would see the clear difference. My next tip is to do with cluster feeding again. When your baby wants to nurse more frequently and be close to you, I would say use that to your advantage, because that sends your body a signal that there is more demand for breast milk, and breast milk supply is a lot dependent on demand and supply. So if your body senses that there's more demand for it, it will ramp up the milk production. So don't worry about your baby feeding more frequently, just let them do it, trust your body, and the supply will come back up. Now moving to some foods that are known to increase breast milk supply. I'm only talking about foods that I have tried personally and have worked for me. There are lots of supplements available, like you can get mother's milk tea by different manufacturers in different countries, but I haven't tried those, so I cannot comment on them. Things that I have tried are just found in your kitchen and are very natural and considered to be quite safe. So the first food that I want to mention is fenugreek, which is widely believed to increase milk supply, and I've noticed that it is true. It is pretty good in, increasing milk supply immediately. But the problem with fenugreek is it comes with certain unpleasant side effects. It made me pretty gassy, and it made my baby very gassy whenever I used to take fenugreek. But it is very effective, so I used to take it once in a while when I needed that extra boost. And the thing about fenugreek is you have to take it in a large quantity, like at least 2 tablespoons. So there are different methods of taking fenugreek. You also get capsules. I think they are easier to swallow maybe in that form, but I didn't do that. I just took 2 tablespoons of fenugreek, soaked it in water for an hour or two, and then just swallow it. It doesn't taste the best, but it is, it works very well. The second food that I want to talk about is garlic, which is again believed to increase milk supply since, ancient times. And I've always used garlic in my cooking, but after Vikrant was born, my mom used to cook for me, and she put extra garlic every time I noticed a little dip in my supply, and that used to make a difference. Next, I also found fennel seeds or saunf to also be helpful with lactation. You can take fennel seeds in whatever form you're comfortable with. I used to boil a couple of tablespoons in water, and I used to just filter it out and drink the water. You can also eat them with your meals or any other way that you're used to, but they are also quite safe and effective. Next is oatmeal, and I always saw a difference in my milk supply whenever I had oatmeal, and I don't like eating oats for breakfast in the porridge form. So if you do like that, that's a great way of incorporating oats into your diet. But what I did was I baked a big batch of lactation cookies. Like, you can find lots of recipes online for lactation cookies, and they always have baker's yeast in those recipes, but I didn't have that, so I just skipped that part. But baker's yeast apparently is very good for lactation as well. But so I baked a huge batch of that, and I used to have 1 or 2 whenever I was craving something sweet. I think it was a great way to have some oats in my diet. And lactation cookies are pretty good because they have lots of healthy natural ingredients in them. So if you're craving something sweet instead of junk, if you can have 1 or 2 of those cookies, it's actually good for your supply as well. And lastly, reduce your stress levels. Like, seriously, I'm telling you this from experience. I used to pump some of the times, and I noticed a very clear difference in my supply whenever I was stressed. I went through a little bit of a stressful time when my son was 4 months old, and during those days I clearly saw that my supply suffered majorly. And it was only when I told myself to put my baby as my first priority and just learn to relax that my body fell back slowly into its natural rhythm. Our bodies are very intelligent, even though we don't understand them completely, and they know how to do their job well. And if your baby is gaining weight well, it means that your supply is good. No matter how often your baby is feeding or how long the feeding sessions are, the number one way to gauge your breast milk supply is your baby's weight gain. But if you're having trouble starting your milk production at all, then you should definitely talk to your doctor, because they might prescribe some medications for you, or you might consider other options that are available. Like, there are amazingly designed formulas available for children these days that are really good for your baby. You can look into those if that case ever comes, but none of these scenarios should ever put you in a position of guilt or feeling bad as a mother, because you know you're doing the best for your child, and there's nothing wrong in taking help or taking medical advice. It does not make you any less of a woman or any less of a mother to take some help. It has been, throughout hundreds of generations, women have taken support from each other, and we've always worked as a team to raise children, right? So I hope these tips were a little bit useful, and all of these tips are, natural home remedies. And whenever I noticed that there was a slight fall in my supply, I would use 2 or 3 of these tips. So first, I used to just take a big glass of water immediately, and in the next feeding session, if the supply has not come back up again, I used to take a glass of electrolytes, and in whatever next meal I was having, I would include garlic and fennel, and have some of those cookies whenever I was hungry. So a combination of 2 or 3 things would somehow work for me, and my supply would come back up again. And throughout my breastfeeding journey, these are the things that helped me out, and I hope they were of some use to you as well. If you're a mom who's breastfeeding your child, please let me know in the comment section if something has helped you. So I will put it in the description box with your name, because it'll be of great use to moms who are starting out on this journey themselves. And I'll see you in one of my next videos. Until then, take care. Bye.